Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, June 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game is in 81 days, the game against Michigan in 172 days. This Ohio State football season, we have been talking about it basically since the moment last season ended. It is probably one of the most anticipated Ohio State football seasons in recent memory and maybe ever. And it feels like we have talked about just about everything that has to do with this season. But then Tony Gerdeman wrote the latest episode or edition of his 50 for 50 series, looking at a bunch of different elements. We've talked about this on the show before: national storylines, Ohio State specific storylines, big games, all that kind of stuff. And he wrote about the interesting scenarios around the Ohio State special teams this year. And I thought, you know what? That is very interesting. And we haven't talked really at all about the special teams. It feels like that's a little bit underreported by everyone, even as we micro focus on all sorts of different pieces of the Ohio State football team. So we're going to be talking about the special teams today and maybe some other stuff. Welcoming in Tony. And Tony, this is a really, really interesting area because it's an area that has gotten a lot of attention from Ohio State football fans in recent years, generally not for great reasons. And then this year, it's going to be run in a completely different way than it has been in previous years because you don't have a special teams coordinator there anymore. So it feels like this is an area where this could go any of a million different directions. Does it go great? And then it's okay. Well, now you had to have all these different people focusing on it. Or does it go terribly? And it's, you need someone who really, really has to micro focus on this thing. It feels like this is an area that could go just about any way possible this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the thing is, when you have notable special teams, it's either because they're great or they're terrible. You don't want to be, I'd say it's better to not be known for them and just fly under the radar. Because if nobody knows it, that means you're doing pretty well. Because you're either going to be Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, where they're known for blocking kicks way back when, and that's their staple. That's what people have come to expect. Or what Ohio State has been in the last few years, where you're just waiting for that one gaffe, that one special teams thing that shouldn't happen, whether it is not everybody getting the signal for a fake punt or a linebacker leaping over the line trying to block a crucial kick when that's an illegal type of play. All kinds of different things that we've seen over the years. And I saved myself from going back and remembering all of them and digging them back up. We talk enough about the 98 Michigan game and, this game and that game. We don't need to drag up all of the terrible memories from Buckeye fans, but you can go back to the losses pretty much and just find specific moments in the special teams that had that gone as it was supposed to, things may have turned out differently.
Yeah, and you talked about the one, the person not getting the signal about a fake punt, or there was a time when they were going to do that in the Peach Bowl, and they had 12 guys on the field, and Georgia called timeout, and it has been a bunch of miscommunications, it seems like, over the last couple of years on special teams, and then this year they're taking a very different approach. Parker Fleming, who was the special teams coordinator, no longer there. He was let go at the end of last season. And instead of having a new guy who's just the guy in charge of special teams, they've kind of divided up the units. So you have some of the position groups, some of the position coaches in charge of punt coverage, for example, or kickoff return. That feels like it's potentially going to be a really beneficial thing because you get a lot of different people looking at it. You probably bring some different ideas together, and you can, this time of year, roll stuff around and go back and forth and spitball ideas and then see whether it works on the field. It feels like that is maybe a interesting and positive way to approach this, but there's certainly no guarantees. And, when you look across the landscape of college football, there are very big and successful programs that have a special teams guy, and there are very big and very big programs that don't have a dedicated, 10 countable assistant special teams guy. It just feels like this could go, a couple different directions, just depending on how these, how the coaches sort of mesh together and how much time they're dedicating to this.
Yeah, and I think we probably should separate special teams from the kicking specialist, because really the special teams coordinator isn't coaching up the kicking. They have their own personal coaches and other coaches for that. So you're going to have a new punter. The kicking has been pretty good over that span. It's been everything else that has been the issue, and whether the kicking is as good as it was last year or worse, that's just how it's going to be. But I would expect the actual special teams portion of things, the coverage and the returning, to be better, because can it not can it get worse, but like at some point you've changed, you've gotten rid of the coach that wasn't living up to what they were expecting, so you would expect things to get better in that area, and that's kind of what I'm expecting now. What does that mean? I think if you just eliminate the mistakes, you're automatically better. But there's that's just an easy baseline, really. Like, do you want to make the special teams into a weapon? Brian Day talks about how it's 1/3 of the game. You got offense, you got defense, and special teams. And yet they have been so passive with their special teams over the years where, the return game is not part of what they do. It's fair catch and punts, and everybody just takes a touchback now and gets the ball to 25. There's no aggression there. There's very little coaching that goes on because you're not doing anything. So I think there's room to become a more aggressive team in special teams. And, that's coverage, that's blocking, that's, blocking kicks, just offense, defense of the special teams area. And now that you've got more guys involved and more guys taking ownership of it, rather than one guy as the coordinator who maybe, I don't want all of this falling on my head. I don't want to, I don't want to be blamed for this or that. You've got more guys that are looking to make something happen, maybe. And now you're going to be equipped to do that.
Yeah, we'll see how that all shakes out. It is an interesting point that the kicking was not really covered under the special teams coordinator, because when you go back and think about the kicking, really, if you look at field goal kicking, for example, there are probably two misses that really jump out to you, and one of them was at the end of, obviously, the Peach Bowl, where Ohio State was probably a little bit passive and settled for too long of a field goal. And then at the end of the first half at Michigan last year, where Ohio State was maybe a little bit passive and settled for a long field goal. And other than that, it feels like Jaden Fielding has been pretty good. Noah Ruggles was pretty good before him. This year, you mentioned the punter. Obviously, you are swapping out one Australian for another. So we will see how Nick McLarty fills in for Jesse Mirko's shoes at the punting spot. But yeah, you wonder, how does this year's offense, which should be pretty good, but is not going to have a CJ Stroud quarterback necessarily there, how does that change the approach to special teams? Because I think one of the reasons they've been a little passive in the kick return game, Tony, is that it was kind of, well, just give the ball to CJ Stroud and let him, throw you down the field, and you'll score touchdowns pretty much every time. So it doesn't really matter where you start. Just make sure you don't turn the ball over. Last year, you didn't have CJ Stroud, and the offense, at times did not put the ball in the end zone. This year, you're probably more of a Kyle McCord-ish passing game. I mean, the running game should be substantially better, but you're probably not going to have a CJ Stroud quarterback. So you wonder, how does that maybe factor into the aggression in the kick return and punt return games?
Yeah, I'm with you. You're going to have to find as many yards as you can get. And we've talked about this in the past, when you have Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields and CJ Stroud, 75 yards is pretty easy to come by. When you don't have those guys, it might be easier to go get 65 yards instead and try to get out past the 25-yard line. And really, we have seen so little from Ohio State in that regard. They had one 30-yard kickoff return last year, nothing over 40 yards, one of just a few Big Ten teams. And, the kickoff return has been voluntarily taken away by coaches. And so I thought maybe we would see more of it last year because of the change in offense. We did not. And now I wonder if we will, simply because you have new coaches involved in giving their feedback, but it's still the head coach that decides, no, I want to do this. No, I don't want to try to kick to the 2-yard line and pin them at the 15. Let's just, because really that's been eliminated as well. So you just try to be like, let's just start every possession at the 25 and go from there. And I think there's room to grow. When you have the weapons that Ohio State has, you should be able to use them in the special teams in the return game. You use them in the coverage game. Why not use them in the return game more effectively?
Yeah, you look at USC and like Zion Branch last year being a true freshman kick returner for them and making some electric plays. It's like, well, Ohio State has some pretty good playmakers on offense, and that has not necessarily translated to special teams. We will see how it translates to special teams this year, and then we will see how that maybe translates to special teams next year if the NCAA follows the NFL's change to the kickoff rule, and that might change everything in the strategy to kickoff returns all over again. But that's next year's problem. There's still this year to look forward to. So that's special teams. You did also very briefly mention you're doing these positional matchups, these individual matchups to watch this year. And there was one that really jumped out to me, Julian Fleming versus Denzel Burke. Now, of course, last year that was a matchup that would have happened on the practice field at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. This year, that's going to be happening at Beaver Stadium. Julian Fleming, the former 5-star number 1 overall wide receiver, played 3 years at Ohio State and then transferred to Penn State this year. He will be getting the ball thrown to him by Drew Aller instead of Kyle McCord. And he's going to be matching up with Denzel Burke. And I think, you look at that Penn State team, they're going to have to be able to throw the ball if they want to beat Ohio State. And they're a little thin at wide receiver. They've lost a couple guys to the portal. That feels like if Julian Fleming has a big day, Penn State has a chance to win that game. And if Julian Fleming doesn't, they're going to have to really probably scratch and claw to try and get to 20, 24, 27 points.
Yeah, and Ohio State's going to go into that game looking to stop the run of Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. So how that matchup goes with Julian Fleming is going to be pretty key. And if they can get a couple of scores there over Denzel Burke or Davis Nigbenosin or whomever, then that's going to obviously help them. And so if I just wonder over the last 3 years that Denzel Burke has been at Ohio State, when they've been together, like how many times have those guys gone against each other? And they're probably sick of seeing each other. So they'll get to do it one more time in Happy Valley. Probably a noon game time. We'll see. We'll see what Fox decides on that one. But certainly a fun matchup where they know each other so well and they'll know all of their little tricks, all of their tendencies. And so it'll be interesting to see who wins that one, because honestly, you look at the success that Ohio State has had in Happy Valley, any of those games, a lot of those games could have gone either way just from a couple of plays here and there. So that matchup, I think, is going to be one that will be fun to watch and really, really key in how that game turns out.
Yeah, that's going to be one that will, as you said, not only be key to how that game turns out, but also just be an interesting narrative storyline to talk about as we head into that. Starting, as you were talking, I was thinking, I wonder if Penn State's going to bring Julian Fleming to Big Ten Media Days. That would be fun to get a chance to talk to him for an extended stretch at some point this summer before the season gets rolling. We will be there at Big Ten Media Days in, 6 weeks or so, and then we'll be at Penn State in, I don't want to guess how many weeks, probably 130-ish days or so. That is right at the end of October. As Tony said, probably a noon kickoff. Nothing official yet, but we'll be there for that one. We'll be there for all of them this year, and it should be a pretty entertaining year, pretty exciting year for Buckeye football, and a pretty exciting year at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting, and our whole team of X's and O's gurus, and a really fun and active board, the Huddle Board, presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And just a reminder, if you are thinking about becoming a member, this would be the week to do it. We have our annual membership sale wrapping up just after Father's Day, so if you were looking at becoming a member, if you were a father, be a great thing to ask for. If you have a father, that would be a great thing to give him. That is a really fun and interactive way to hang out with us, learn more about the team, get some inside information on recruiting and the team and all that fun stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.